Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that what you wear has the power to change how you feel? Project Endure apparel is designed to remind you that easy won't make you stronger, and that growth is an uncomfortable choice that we all have the privilege to make every day. Look good, feel good, and perform good. Head to the link in the show notes to shop Project Endure apparel and keep on doing hard things. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 78. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very, very special guest in North Dakota, Shey Johnson. Shey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. This has been in the works behind the scenes for a few months. And you are my first North Dakota guest. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about North Dakota? Because I got to be honest, it's one of those states that I don't think about very often at all.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those misconceptions that people always think of, like the movie Fargo or whatever. And I've seen that once in my life. And I'm like, I hope this isn't what people think about Fargo. Um, but yeah, as far as myself, I just turned 29. So I have a 4-year-old and he is very busy, keeps me busy for sure. Currently I'm in real estate. I got my degree in exercise science, but I have a lot of different passions, I guess you could say, but definitely fall along the lines of health and fitness and just well-being for the most part. But yeah, like I said, I'm in real estate now and kind of dabbling with a few different things and being a mom and just enjoying life. So, but yeah, North Dakota, it's a balmy 16 degrees today. So like I said, I went ice fishing today. So it was fun. Like there's things to do. But yeah, when people think of like Fargo or North Dakota in general, they're just like, what do you do there? And it's like, and when it gets the cold months, you try to travel. So
What is the coldest that you've ever experienced in your life? I'm curious.
oh gosh. I'm pretty sure we've hit like -50 with wind chill. I mean, like you have the temperature, which is probably like -20 or something, but then the wind here is ridiculous. So with the wind chill, like it's very cold. Like we'll have wind advisories or like winter storm or, they basically tell you to stay inside.
So if you go outside in -50 degree weather, what happens? I mean, that's got to be dangerous, no?
Yeah, I mean, you could get frostbite very fast. So yeah, I mean, even like with Mason too, we're just going outside myself. I mean, they'll, cancel school if it gets super cold and whatnot. But yeah, it's not fun to like walk outside and just feel your face freeze.
Yeah, well, I guess I can't complain at all about the 10-degree days that we might experience here on the East Coast every now and then. So,
Yeah.
Shey, why don't you bring us back to the beginning? Because I'm curious how you got to where you are today. So why don't you bring us back to childhood and then we'll fast forward. We'll move toward present day from there.
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, growing up here my entire, I'm like, how far back are we going? But I grew up with 4 brothers. I have a pretty blended family. Well, I say 6 because I have 2 stepbrothers as well. But I grew up in a really blended family, and my parents got divorced when I was 5. So I mean, I was always kind of back and forth. But my dad is a pretty adventurous person, so we were always camping or like trail riding and going to the lake. And so I spent a lot of my summers outside or like playing with my brothers. So I think that has a lot to do with how I am now, just kind of that mentality. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time indoors, watching movies or playing video games kind of thing. It was like I was always outside or always with my brothers. And so yeah, I mean, like I said, my parents got divorced when I was 5, but I never felt like that really affected me. I never really saw my friends who had parents who were married and be like, I wish I had that kind of thing. But yeah, I grew up, I mean, Fargo Moorhead's pretty big. I graduated the class of like 350 students, but I always enjoyed school. I had a good friend group. I feel like I got along with everyone. And then in high school, I was always into sports. I mean, I was never really good at anything, but I was just always super competitive. Like I love gym class and all that. And I think that's kind of when my love for like exercise and being active started. But yeah, so I played volleyball and golf and I ran cross country for a year. And the year I ran cross country, when I was 17 and a junior in high school, I got diagnosed with an eating disorder. So yeah, I was diagnosed with anorexia at that time. So that was kind of, I don't want to say the pivotal moment of my life, but it just kind of started and it happened for years, just kind of like back and forth between anorexia or binge eating. And it was like a full on cycle. But is there more you wanted to kind of hear about childhood? I'm like, it kind of goes on from there, but
Nah, it's pretty good for now. I mean, there's going to be a lot to dig into, I'm sure.
yeah,
And with that backdrop, I figured I'd ask you the first question and we can go from there.
sure.
But when you look back at your entire life, childhood and adulthood, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle? So, an experience or a circumstance that you didn't necessarily get to choose for yourself. Tell us about that.
I first thought when you said that, because I mean, it's something I handled, but it wasn't necessarily one event that I ever felt was really traumatizing for me. Like, I never had something that was just, like one big life event really that did that for me. But kind of looking back, I mean, with being diagnosed with anorexia, it was a whole time of my life. I mean, that didn't end like having disordered thoughts around food didn't really end until I was 24. So, I mean, 7 years of just kind of not being at peace with food or my body or myself. Cause I mean, it wasn't just food that was bothersome to me. It was like everything in my life because I had that perfectionist personality. Like I was very type A, very black and white with everything. Like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go all in. And, that can be a blessing or a curse. And I think in my case, it was a blessing for things like I was pretty good in school. Like, I was very follow the rules kind of girl, but I was also, digging myself a hole. So as far as something I had to overcome or something of that nature, like definitely when it came to the eating disorder aspects. I mean, I went to outpatient therapy. I mean, I saw a dietitian, I saw a psychiatrist, I saw a psychologist, and that was for, I think, 2 years. And I missed a lot of school because of it. And I gained a lot of weight, in that first year because they were basically like, oh, you need to eat more, 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 to the point where it was like I was sitting at the kitchen table and my stepmom had to watch me physically eat. And I remember eating so much that I felt physically ill because I was just not used to that. But that's what they were wanting me to do to recover. Um, so, yeah, I think it started there and then it got to the binge eating. So it's like I was used to eating all this food. And so I was just constantly eating. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to gain any weight. Like I'm supposed to be eating. And then, the next thing I know, it's been a couple months and I'm 30 pounds heavier. And now I'm at this healthy weight, but I'm literally just eating garbage. And like I'm used to this, no, this new cycle. And that continued on throughout college too. I mean, I developed, I don't even know what you'd call it necessarily. Like I was just orthorexia. I think that's a term people throw around, where I was just working out all the time. I was eating only super healthy foods. Like if there was cake or cookies or, anything that was deemed unhealthy, I wouldn't touch it. So I just got into this really bad mindset with kind of the all in on like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a day. I'm going to eat only healthy. And like, sure, I looked good until I didn't. And then in college, I got into bodybuilding. So I competed in bikini. And, so I went from anorexia to binge eating to this orthorexia to now I'm a bikini competitor. And in a way, my mom said that, being a competitor kind of saved me because I was in some really, with like the orthorexia and just like working out way too much, eating way too little. Whereas when I started competing, I started to learn about food. I started to learn about macronutrients and, eating protein for the right reasons and, having myself cheat days because at that point I had to put on weight to compete. I mean, I had to put on weight and muscle in order to look good on stage and not just depleted. Um, so yeah, that's a whole string of things. And then, I mean, obviously post competition, you have all those struggles. So, I mean, I could go on with with that because I mean, like I said, it went on for years.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot to talk about, and we also share a few things in common, which we'll get into. But
Yeah.
it's interesting to me because I think a lot of people would look at the world of bodybuilding and physique and think that's not healthy. And there's some merit there. You know, there are certain aspects of that that maybe aren't the healthiest. However, it sounds like that world, in a way, saved you and gave you an outlet to channel how you thought about food and how you learned about food and how you put your energy into something that was productive. And hey, tell us more about that, because I think that's probably contrary to what most people would think about that sport.
Yeah, like bikini competing in general. Yeah. I mean, I'm a very competitive person by nature. I feel, and that was, like you said, a way to put my energy towards it. Cause like I got cut from volleyball, I wasn't in high school sports anymore. I wasn't doing college sports. So it's like, it was something for me to just enjoy working out. And then it's dry up here. um, but when I started competing, like my coach, she told me what to eat. So I was on a very bodybuilder style meal plan. So I was eating chicken and rice and eggs and sweet potatoes and protein powder. It was very basic, but then I also had like my cheat days or my free meals, she'd like to call them. And that's I could really eat whatever I wanted. And for me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to ruin it. So I was pretty particular about like what my free meals were. And I'm like, oh, sushi, like, whereas most people would be like, I'm gonna eat a cheeseburger and ice cream, like we're gonna go all the way here. And I'm like, I'm good with my sushi. And then over time I was better about, actually enjoying the treat meal. Um, but yeah, I mean, she basically cut me back from doing all this cardio and I wasn't going to the gym 3 times a day. And I wasn't, I was actively working on putting on muscle and doing workouts that weren't just like running up and down the stairs and then doing like 15 burpees and, things that I thought were going to help me with that. But yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about discipline. I was in college at the time. Like, I didn't have a normal college experience. I was a girl bringing like chicken and baggies to class and, showing up in my yoga pants because I just came from the gym. So it's like, even when I turned 21, the first time I bought alcohol was the night before my show because my coach was like, go get wine to help dry you out for your show. And it's like, I was 4 months into being 21. I'm like, this isn't my lifestyle. I mean, you know, so it was just kind of funny. And I never thought of it as different, but, I didn't go to college and I wasn't making a ton of friends. I was very much so in my zone. I was working multiple jobs, I was going to school and I was competing. Like that was my life. And, I don't regret it for the world because I enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm a very competitive person and the discipline that taught me, even with what I can take now, it's like I was there, I did it. Like, I did well when I was competing, but it's just not really part of my life now. Like you kind of go through phases and I'm a mom now, so things happen. But um, yeah, I mean, the whole aspect of prep was interesting. Just because I think for me, kind of looking back at my mindset, the negative aspect of that, it's like if I was to go somewhere like to a birthday party or something, I had an excuse because I could say I'm on prep. Like people knew what I was doing, and even if they didn't know what I was doing, I'd be like, basically, I can't eat what you're offering. Sorry. And then post show, that was hard for me. Coming from having disordered eating or like having anorexia or binge eating. So coming from a place where I was so restricted in what I was eating, and now it's like, okay, well, now I have free reign. I'm not on a meal plan. I tried reverse dieting, and that just was very difficult for me because I didn't see the end goal. I didn't have a show coming up now. And so it's like, well, now I don't know what to do. And I put on a lot of weight after my shows. And unless it was back to back to back, which I did do 3 back to back back, like 2 weeks apart, it was difficult to kind of get in the mindset of learning how to eat like a normal person again.
It's really crazy that our relationship with one of the few things that we need to keep us alive can be so complex and challenging and almost defining of a season of life. And I don't know how many people listening to this podcast know this about me, but during college, I went through something similar where I stopped playing football and I didn't really have a structured outlet for my energy. And so I decided I was going to just spend more time in the gym. And that slowly turned into me becoming obsessed with how I looked, what went into my body, what I was doing fitness wise. And I was the kid who had a backpack full of caffeine pills. And as soon as class was over, like the second the bell rang, I was on my way to the gym as fast as I could get there to hop on the spin bike and ride the spin bike for like 3 hours until I was drenched in sweat and felt like I did enough work so that I could go home and like eat some rice cakes and chicken and whatever it was. And I measured everything to a T. I mean, I would avoid social settings like it was the plague. I wanted to control every ounce of everything that went into my body. And the craziest part is, there was nothing that anybody could tell me at that time that would have changed how I felt about any of that. And I
Yeah.
look back and I wish I could just shake myself. But there was no telling me otherwise. And I'm curious if you look back at your younger self during the anorexic or the binge eating phase or the orthorexic phase, like, is there anything that you could have told your younger self that would have changed things? Or did you need to go through that to get to where you are now?
Hearing you say that, like honestly, I'm such a stubborn person where I really don't think so. Like I think in my mind, like I had to go through that. And, being a spiritual person, I do believe I went through that for a reason. I'm no dietitian, like I'm no psychologist or anything, but even sharing my story and helping people see like I came out of that, like I don't struggle with food anymore. But yeah, looking at my younger years, I'm like, I had people say things to me like comment about my weight or what I was eating, or even, had some unfortunate things said to me, even to my face. And it didn't stop me. Like it didn't bother me. It was almost feeding what I was already doing. So it's kind of doing the reverse effect of what people wanted. It's like when people said things to me, I'm just like, okay, we're doing this right. Like, it was, I don't know if it was an attention thing or just an ego, or I don't know, just being stubborn. And like I have this goal, even though it wasn't necessarily a goal. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything anyone could have done or said that would have changed that, honestly.
Yeah. And I think it's really hard for people on the outside because I've been around people who have these habits or ways of being that probably aren't the best for them. And you want the best for that person and you want to help them make a change. And the truth is, you can't force somebody to make a change that they're not ready for. And I think sometimes we need to go through seasons of life. We need to go through things and get to the other side in order to finally be ready to make that change. And sometimes we just need people to be there for us and to be patient with us. Because I think we've all been there in that place where we probably know something's not right, but we're just not ready yet to make that change. And so,
Yeah.
did you have those people around you in life during those seasons?
That were like hoping I would change. Oh yeah. I mean, even so, the reason I got into therapy is like I got called. I was just sitting in class one day and someone came up and they were like, Cheyenne, the nurse wants to see you. I'm like, that's weird. Like, what happened? Like, I feel fine. Like, hopefully nothing else happened to anyone else. And I go down there. And as soon as I sit down, I'm like, I know exactly what this is about. And they were just like, we have, some of your like your classmates and your teachers worried about you. And to this day, I don't exactly know who. I have a good idea, but I don't exactly know who confronted the nurse or like told her to like contact me. But I went down there, and sitting and talking to her wasn't tough. But when she said that she had to call my dad, I was like, my stomach fell out because it's like, don't call my dad. um, but my stepmom, for sure, I mean, she was always there to like make sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. My mom, like my parents were just, I think, worried about me more than anything. And my friends too. I mean, they always were including me with everything. No one really shunned me out because of the, decisions I was making. And more so than anything, I think they were just coming from a place of care. And no one ever really, I don't know, I remember like a couple conversations with my best friend, and I always knew she was there for me and I knew people were worried. So I always felt supported, but it's not like what they said or did was going to stop what was happening. So,
Yeah. So you get to the other side of everything tied to eating. Why, what changed, I guess, is the question. And how is your relationship with food today so different, right? What changed to make that the case? And then also, where and how have you channeled that competitive, stubborn side of you into the things you're doing today? What does that look like?
yeah. Honestly, the one thing that I can really pinpoint, which is, well, however it comes off, it comes off. But when I got pregnant, I mean, at that point, I was like, okay, I need to take care of my body. Because I mean, I was trying prior to that, and this was 2017. So I mean, I got diagnosed in 2010 and then dealt with things on and off for 7 years. And so when I got pregnant, I'm like, I want to make sure this baby is healthy. Like, I want to have, I just want to have a body that is healthy, that can carry this baby, and that nothing will go wrong. Because I was also very anxious and paranoid. And I'm like, I didn't want to do anything that was going to, cause anything to happen. Um, and so I think that's really when I started getting into eating more whole foods, I guess you could say. Like when I stopped looking at nutrition in food in numbers or macros and really started paying attention to ingredients. Like that's my number one thing now, which it's so hard to kind of get that out into the world too, because it's like, okay, yes, pay attention to ingredients, but also pay attention to like how much you're consuming. But yeah, for me, it's like that's really when I dialed in and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go more at the holistic route, I guess I would put it. And I think I just got so excited learning about food. And, I have a degree in exercise science. Like I've always loved learning about nutrition. And maybe that kind of started with, the eating disorders, but now it's just fascinating to me. And it's like I love learning how the body works. I love how certain foods make me feel. And sure, I'll allow myself, treats whenever I want, but I also know how things make me feel. And that's the biggest thing for me. So it's like my the point of which all that all changed was really when I got pregnant. So it's like those thoughts of wanting to eat everything in the pantry just kind of subsided. I mean, it took time, but I just felt really good. I mean, I had a thankfully very healthy and good pregnancy. I have no complaints. um, but that was kind of the biggest thing for me. And then what was the second part of that question?
Yeah, second part was just where and how have you channeled your competitive energy into what you do today?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is physical for me. So I still love going to the gym. I think it's kind of me versus me now, though. I mean, I'm obviously not competing against other people in the gym or anything like that, but it's being able to look back at pictures or just even increasing my strength. And I've kind of gotten in and out of different things. I mean, I love lifting, but I've also done like yoga or I was running for a while. I just kind of doing what I enjoy now. And lately I've been doing F45, and I think that helps my competitiveness a lot. um, just being able to be around people and just like you're really working on yourself and really pushing your limits. And the coaches also push me very hard too. So
Yeah, it's always nice to have people around you, whether it's a physical pursuit or a professional pursuit or whatever kind of endeavor you're going through, to have a group of people around you, to have a community of people who are there with you, experiencing what you're experiencing. I think that's so powerful. And just to backtrack, I think it's so awesome to hear that things turned a corner for you with food when you were pregnant, because I don't know if you think of it like this, but the way I took it is you now had a reason to make a change that was bigger than you. And it wasn't just about Shey anymore. It was about your child. And I think that's really special and really admirable. And appreciate you sharing.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, how is it being a single mom right now for Mason?
Honestly, it's what I'm used to, I guess, at this point, but I say single mom lightly because we have so much support. Like his dad and I have a really good relationship, and I am so thankful for that because I mean, I know people who are single moms or single parents and some of the horror stories you hear, and it's like I'm very thankful I don't go through that. I mean, sure, we've had some bumps in the road, but his dad and like our family, like our whole families live here, all of his family and all my family. So, I mean, even right now, grandma's watching him. So I'm very thankful for all that. So, I mean, yes, I'm a single mom because like when I'm here, especially because I don't work a typical, like I don't go to work while he's at daycare. Sometimes having to answer things while he's right in front of me, or sometimes he has to come to a showing with me. So I think that aspect can get tough. Or even just kind of feeling, I don't even know if it's necessarily being like a single mom here with him. I think it's almost, I won't say grieving the thought of a family, but just knowing that I'm the one waking him up in the morning and I'm the one getting him to bed every night. I mean, when he's with me, so to speak. But like it's hard there because I mean, if I have something I need to do and he's not getting attention, like that's the part that crushes me because I know there's so many times where he wants my attention, he fights for it, and that's kind of when I can tell that his energy is getting a little out of whack just because I'm like I need to do this like now, like this is kind of something I need to do, and so if it's just that mom guilt, like that mom guilt is so hard trying to balance everything between like being in a relationship with friends, with work just because I do, multiple things where it's like I have to be on my phone. And so it's been something that I know I need to make a change with, and I try to just give him that attention. Um, but so, I mean, I don't want to say pros and cons, but like personally, I don't have a terrible experience being a single mom. Like it's kind of all I know at this point. But the hardest part for me is definitely time management and setting boundaries and just being present. Like being present for whatever reason can be so hard.
Yeah. It is being a mom the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose?
I would say so. Yeah. um, yeah, I mean, being a mom is like you're worrying about someone aside from yourself. And I don't want to say I've always been a selfish person, but in a way, like before him, it's so easy to just do whatever I wanted. And like I said, I'm very competitive. So it's like I like to excel. And like use social media too. Like you're comparing yourself to people who aren't moms or they aren't single moms. And I'm like, I can't do that because that puts me in a negative mindset.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, definitely. It's like kind of taking a step back. It's like my number one job is to raise this child and raise him well. And, at the end of the day, nothing else matters. And I have to remind myself of that time. It's like, okay, work can wait. I don't have to hang out with my friends tonight. I don't have to go to that event. Um, so it's also making sacrifices, which I'm trying to figure out that balance. But yeah, being a mom is hard, especially when they're toddlers and they can talk back and, there's throwing of toys and screaming and it's just it can be a lot and very overwhelming. And for someone who gets overwhelmed easily, there's been some times I've had to take a step back because it's like, you know, you see a side of yourself that you don't always really know about. And I think it's kind of lonely in the fact that's not as talked about because I think it's something that a lot of moms feel, but we just don't talk about because of all that shame and guilt surrounding it.
Mm. Well, I think we should talk about it. And I do want to point out a few things. One, I have also noticed through marriage and now through having a puppy, which is not the same as having a child, I am very selfish. That's my nature, and I would extrapolate to say that is everybody's nature. I think we are all selfish by nature, right? That's part of being human. You look out for yourself, you think about yourself. And when you have another person or another living being in your life that you are now responsible for, and you can't just go do what you want because you have to account for this other person, it changes things. And it does bring out a side of you that you might not have seen otherwise, right? I rewind in my own life to college. I used to spend 3, 4, 5 hours in the gym. I'm lucky if I can get in an hour and a half workout in the morning before the rest of my day goes, and I come home to let the dog out. And, I'm sure as life goes on, that only gets harder and harder. And so I would love to hear about that side that maybe is not talked about, and those things that you feel or notice about yourself that maybe you don't love that much, because I know I've seen those things in myself. And I think that there are a lot of people listening who could probably relate on a deep level and do feel pretty alone in it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think because he's 4.5 and he is so smart. And that, I think he's a spitting image of me sometimes, which is hard because like we're both stubborn. He's very, very adamant about what he wants and he will do anything until he gets it, which I admire. But at the same time, like last night, for instance, he had 2 packs of gummy bears because I was just like trying to get dinner ready. I was trying to answer some emails. I was trying to do all the things. I'm like, have the gummy bears. I don't care. But then after that, he comes back and he had like 3 more in his hand. And then he was like giving me this face, like, I'm going to eat these gummy bears. I'm like, we're not doing more gummy bears. It's not happening. And so he goes to the fridge and he like, just the face he gives me, like he knows what he's doing. And it just irks me. Like it just triggers something in me that I'm like, don't start this. Do not start this. We're not doing this tonight. And it's just little things like that. And sometimes, and like I said, I'm very overstimulated or very overwhelmed. So he got a plethora of RC cars for Christmas, and I have hardwood floors. Well, not hardwood, but they're like, you drive on them and they make a lot of noise.
Mhm.
And if I'm trying to focus on something, or even if I'm just sitting there, like trying to enjoy just him and I, or like peace, and all of a sudden these little RC cars are going around and like running into stuff, and I'm just like, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm like, please go on the carpet, go downstairs. And it's just like little things that I think about after the fact that I'm like, Cheyenne, that wasn't even a big deal. Like, let him be a kid. But in the moment, I'm like, I am so annoyed. I didn't grow up around kids. I had nieces and nephews, but I wasn't someone to ever babysit. Like, I wasn't a nanny. I never offered to watch kids. Not saying I didn't like kids or I don't like kids, but it's just, it was never really in my nature to be like that overly warm, like motherly sense. I knew I always wanted kids, but you don't really notice until you have your own. I'm like, I'll tell him I love him a million times a day. I will. But as far as being like overly cuddly with him or like overly, I don't know how to put that. Like, I don't feel like I'm the type of mom who will make him soft, to put it lightly,
Yeah.
which could be, he's very kind, but sometimes that worries me too. Because I'm like, I've never talked to him like a baby or anything. So I've always just, talked to him and he's so smart, but it's just, it's the thoughts of if am I not doing enough? Like, am I not loving him enough? If I'm not showing him enough attention or care or compassion, like I do not have enough fun with him. And I think it's all those thoughts. And like it kind of going back to social media, like you see other moms on social media and people like to put their kids super happy or, like the giggles and the laughs or them taking a family vacation or, it's that comparison of like, what am I doing wrong? Like, is my child going to end up, not being okay because, he's not super happy 24/7. I mean, we have tantrums and he gets mad, I get mad, and it's just trying to figure it out, especially at this age, is just so difficult because he's becoming this little person and like he knows exactly what he's doing. He's very intelligent, like he can pick up on things. But yeah, a lot of it is just kind of comes back to that mom guilt and the shame of giving him what he needs and deserves. And am I able to do that on my own with everything I have going on? Like, am I making the right decisions in my personal and professional life in order to give him the best life? I think that's something that also is hard.
Do you think there's an answer to that question? Do you think you would ever be able to even know at this point?
I don't know because I'm like sometimes like I don't work a full-time job. Like I don't have a normal stable job. And kind of going back to your question of what I did on purpose that has been hard, like quitting my full-time job, I did that on purpose and it's been hard. Like I don't make the same amount of money per week. I don't make the same amount of money per month. Like I don't have the same schedule. And I know how big routine is for kids. And to put it very bluntly, like we don't have that. I try to make things as routine at home with like bedtime and dinner and all that, and like getting up and going to daycare. So I try to keep as much of that in his life as possible, but knowing that I live very out of routine, like every day is different. Um, I don't know if there's an answer because sometimes it's like I could go out and get a normal job where I'm very stable financially. We do the whole thing that people do. We get up, we go to school and daycare, we come home, we have dinner, we do whatever, and then we go to bed and repeat the cycle. But I don't know if getting into that would be putting my dreams on hold. Like I also want to set a good example for him that he can do whatever he wants. So it's kind of twofold.
I got a few questions.
Okay.
What led you to leave your full-time job?
I just, I'm not cut out to sit at a desk all day. Like I'm not, I don't know. I didn't mind my job. It wasn't anything that I was passionate about or went to school for. It was mostly, it was, I don't even want to say it was flexible. Like I worked there through 2020. So, I mean, we got to work from home, which was fantastic. After that was over and we had to go back to the office, I'm like, I cannot do this because something that, was put on my schedule or like something I had to do that was supposed to take me all day, I'd have done by lunch. And so after lunch, I'd be sitting there staring at a brick wall for 3 hours. I'm like, someone give me something to do. I just get bored easily. So I need that like constant, uh, I don't know. I like doing different things, which is why I'm kind of scatterbrained in everything that I do in life, but I kind of thrive off of that as well. But yeah, when I quit my full-time job, I'm like, this isn't for me. I know it's going to be tough because I mean, I was going into real estate at the time, but I was also coaching clients online. So I had income and I'm like, I can make this work. I think the biggest thing for me, I was scared. Like I was over 26 at that point. I needed health insurance. I needed, all of that. I think that was the biggest thing keeping me from taking that leap.
Yeah. You also mentioned the struggle of how do I balance my dreams versus what's best for Mason.
Yeah,
What are your dreams?
I love to travel. So, I mean, like I am a goal-oriented person, but sometimes I don't want to say I've let go of goals, but I've also just wanted to kind of let life happen in a way. Like I want to always have something that I'm doing, but I don't want to be so tied to that where I'm not open to other possibilities in life. But, like I love to travel. I basically just want to be financially stable and be able to do what I want when I want. Like I know in my heart that I've always been someone who likes helping people. And I still kind of tie it back to I went through what I went through for a reason. How I'm going to make a change with that or what that's going to lead to, I don't know. Because obviously real estate is not very, it's not something where I show this side of myself. I'm not super vulnerable in the world of real estate. So I think that's also kind of hard to balance like my online presence compared to like trying to be this professional person that people take seriously.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing, which is like super cheesy, but just the ability to do what I want when I want, am happy and, you know, don't have to stress about finances. I think that's like a big thing for me.
Yeah. I don't want to say goals are overrated, but I think that I think that goals serve a purpose, but I think the purpose is to guide the process. And what you're talking about sounds like getting to the end state of a process where your life every day affords you the freedom and flexibility to do what you want, the way you want it, with the people you want, when you want. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's really what most people want. And to backtrack to your point about giving Mason like the best childhood possible so that he can develop and grow into the best person possible, like I obviously structure and schedule are important pieces, but to see your mom working so hard to make her dreams come true and like both of your dreams come true, I think that's really special. And I would imagine that he'll pick up on that because it sounds like he's very perceptive. So
Yeah,
I think it's really awesome what you're doing. And also just to acknowledge that you're doing more than most people in any given day, it seems like, and you're taking care of Mason is just incredible.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right, Che. So I have another question for you. This one is about a particular word. So this is the Project Endure podcast. And what you're doing requires a lot of endurance. When you hear that word, endurance, what does that mean to you?
and to me, it kind of, this is maybe more of like a direct term, but like stamina. I mean, keeping the thought of keeping going or like keep going. I mean, endurance, not giving up on yourself. I don't know if I have like the right way to put all of that, but when I think of that, I basically think keep going. Like you're doing this, you're not giving up. You have something to accomplish and you're not going to stop until you get it.
Have you ever had a moment in life where you've thought about stopping pursuing something that you really cared about, but kept going anyway?
So many times. And to be fair, there are things that I've, stopped that it's for me, it's hard to differentiate between do I not want to do it or, is it like I want to do it, but I'm just scared, so I think it's a little bit of both of those. But yeah, I mean, I easily could get a job tomorrow because like entrepreneurship is hard. So that's like the biggest thing. I mean, I had to remove the thought of having a backup plan because I did that for so long. I was constantly like, even after I was well into real estate or well into online coaching, I'm like, I was always skimming Indeed. I'm like, oh, I could do that. Or, like, I'm like, Shine, don't do this. Like, you've had so many jobs in your life, and there's clearly a reason why you're not at those anymore. Like, I've never been fired in my life, but I've worked a lot of jobs. I've had a lot of experience at them, and it's like it's hard for me to quit places too. But yeah, I think a big thing there is like I've kept going with this now for a year and a half, so I think that's progress.
Are there any particular lessons you've learned through entrepreneurship that you'd like to share?
I think something that I was told when I first got into real estate, which I hold near and dear to my heart because I think it's very important, is you can't ride the highs too high and you can't ride the lows too low because those days are going to be so hard where you're just like, screw this. I don't want to do this. This is way too hard mentally. Like it's affecting myself, it's affecting my family. Um, but then you have to look at it because like you have the high days too where you're like, this is amazing. Like I want to do this forever. And so it's like, what do you do in the middle? Like, you just have to ride the wave and be okay with the fact like you are doing this for a reason and you have goals. And if you decide to stop right now because you're having a low day, like you won't get to experience those high days. Like you don't know what could come from if you just tried a little bit harder. I actually listened to a podcast or it's the Ed Milet book, The Power of One More, if you've read that. I was listening to it today and he had like the pinata scenario. I don't know if you've heard that where like kids keep hitting the pinata. And then all of a sudden this one kid, and he gets it and everything happens, whatever. And he's like, and he said, keep going after the pinatas in your life. So it's like every little crack that you're making, it's eventually going to happen. But so many people stop before that pinata breaks open. So I
Yeah.
thought that was a cool analogy scenario.
Yeah, I think persistence is one of the most important qualities that any human being could have. And it's there's so many analogies. And I've heard the woodpecker analogy where the woodpecker needs to continuously hit the same spot on the tree over and over and over again. And James Clear has the ice cube analogy where you turn up the temperature in the room 1 degree at a time and it looks like nothing's happening until all of a sudden the ice cube melts. And you have to stick with it. And I think what entrepreneurship has shown me is that the emotional volatility in life is a lot higher when you're doing your own thing, when you take ownership of your own life. However, there's a lot of value in being able to regulate those emotions and come back to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And on those really high days, staying humble and being able to come back to the middle. And on those really low days, staying hopeful and being able to come back up to the middle. And I think when we're composed, when we're steady, when we're focused in the middle, most of us are at our best, but getting there is really, really hard. And even just to tie this back into what you said about parenting, it sounds like parenting requires a lot of patience, and almost like a surrender at certain points was a word that popped into my head. And it just seems like no matter what it is in life, if it's parenting or our professional pursuits or other relationships, like the things that are really worth it, the things that are really hard require us to persist, to endure, and to come back to the middle time and time again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So one more question before we get to the final question for you. As you look forward kind of to the near future or even the longer term future, do you have any plans that are exciting, out of the ordinary, something that you're really looking forward to or pursuing that's a little bit different?
I don't know if it's necessarily like a plan, but something that I think is very cool, I guess. We have what's called the 35 under 35 group in our community. So it's United Way of Cast Clay and like 35 under 35. So it's 35 women under the age of 35. And basically it's like a leadership group. So we get together once a month. And we had our first one a couple weeks ago, and there's over 180 applicants. And the really cool thing is like I didn't make it in because of like my social media or my name or anything that I've done because it's all blind. So like they didn't know who was tied to the answers that were on the application. And then I had an interview. And so like to be able to make it in that, it just kind of lit a fire under me, I guess. It's like, okay, I'm going to learn so much by being around all these really powerful women and being a part of something that is bigger than me and like really stepping out in my community and maybe even doing a little exploring on what it looks like, or maybe having someone be able to tell me like, hey, Shine, you have this like strength, use that. I think it's the hardest thing too, is like to get yourself to do something when you don't really see it. Like for me personally, it's so much easier to look at someone and see what they're doing or see what their past is and be able to be like, why don't you do that? So I think for me, it's kind of, I don't want to say like waiting for a light bulb moment, but I have a lot of faith in what this can bring me for this year. Um, so I don't necessarily have any like projects in the works. I'm kind of at a standstill with coaching right now. I kind of had to take a step back from that, which is totally fine. And then real estate I'm really enjoying. So it's for me, it's just kind of figuring out how I can maybe tie in my passion for, health and wellness, or even sharing more of my story, or being able to be more vulnerable like I used to, because for some reason it's a lot more hard. Um, and, just being able to be more myself and be okay with that. So I guess I don't know if that necessarily answers the questions, but I'm very excited for this year because I haven't felt this strongly about good things happening in a while.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. That's really, really great to hear. So the last question is my favorite. Um, there are a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are all over the country in different seasons of life, going through different things. And some people listening to this podcast are stuck, frustrated, lost, confused, maybe just in need of some encouragement. And if you get a chance right now to speak directly to those people, what would you say to them?
I think a big thing is just not being afraid to reach out. I mean, for me, like looking at people who are maybe doing the things that I wanted to do, or having those conversations, or just being more uh, upfront, I guess. Like it's so hard to ask those questions or to be bold and to put yourself out there, but it's like at the same time, if you don't ask, you'll never know. Um, so that's a huge thing. But also, I think I hate to keep saying it, but it's like just keep going. Like take every day and just make little strides. Like nothing is accomplished in one full day. So it's like if you can do little things like writing a checklist where it's literally 3 simple things that you know you can do, like you're already doing more than you were set out to do in the beginning of the day. So I don't know if there's like anything like really moving or powerful, but it's like literally just take it day by day and focus on yourself. And like it doesn't matter what anyone else says or thinks because it's your life. I think that's the biggest thing I've had to get over. Is just the fact of it doesn't matter. Like no one else is living your life. So just do what you want to do and don't stop until you reach that or, get to a point where you can maybe, not saying you have to quit your job or anything, but I think there's so many people who feel really stuck in what they're doing. And there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to pivot like the slightest bit and you can get out. And like, so I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah. The phrase that you said that stuck with me was it's your life. And in the world of social media, where we get to see everything that everybody else is doing, and it all seems positive and it all seems fun and it all seems sometimes better than what we have going on, it's easy to get caught in that comparison trap where we want what we think other people have. And just to remember that it's our life and what we see isn't necessarily what's going on. And we have to focus on what we're doing, where we're going, and things work out. They really do. And we have to trust that. And I just appreciate your message a ton, Shey. Is there anything else you'd like to add in?
I don't think so. Yeah, this has been fun. So I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. I can't believe this is your first podcast ever. You did great. If people want to reach out, if they want to follow along with your journey or just learn more about you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Probably Instagram. I'm pretty good about answering my DMs, and I think my email is even attached to there. But yeah, my Instagram would be the easiest place to find me. Which
Awesome. I'll link that down in the description, but tell people just in case people want to listen to it. What is it?
so I say Shey Fit. Some people have said Shy Fit. I don't know what you think when you see it, but so yeah. So SHEYFIT is my Instagram handle there.
Awesome. Well, Shey, thank you so much for this. I appreciate you and everything that you do. And a quick little story for anybody listening to this podcast. We got connected probably 2 years ago, just through social media. And I forget how this all transpired, but at one point, I believe that I supported you through a discount code or something. And it ended up that you sent me a birthday gift, like a really nice birthday gift one year, which was like, for like someone who we've never met, and I don't even know if at that point we talked on the phone, maybe once, maybe not. I was just blown away by your kindness and generosity, and I wanted to throw that in there because there are those little things that happen in the world of social media and outside of it that just like can light up somebody's world. And I appreciate the way that you show up and for that and all you do. So I didn't forget about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.